Are all humans inherently evil? Well, if you look a lot at the television, if you take people who live in miserable places on the planet, in poverty and the such, you will have an easy tendency to believe the such. But are we actually truly evil from birth? See, any mother you will ask, any person you will ask, any true scientist, not the bozos of nowadays society, if you ask them, you will see that, you will even hear, they will tell you all sorts of ideas, especially medics in maternities. You will hear that there is no such thing as a child that was born evil. All those children were just pure forces of life. They had no attachments, they had no languages, they had no belonging to any aspect of this sick society as well. So, how can those beings be evil? Even if their parents were evil in the end, parental karma doesn't have much of an influence on the child, especially when they are young. Ah, yes, there were very few cases of so called psychopathic children. They were even put into research, and well, there are known. But those were not the first children who were birthed like that. There are extremely few cases, and such few cases cannot ever be used as a generalization. But when we live in a sick society, in a narcissistic society, what will it happen? Well, a lot of people will live in misery nonetheless. When they do, what is going to happen? Well, the apex is obviously narcissism because that is the apex of misery. Around there should be also sociopathy and psychopathy, but those are somewhat different. As far as I have observed on the inner system, the narcissism seems to be the epitome of such misery. And the idea of reflecting upon others everything that you feel is obviously going to be a strategy of coping, a coping mechanism, if you want to call it so. Such people will always blame others for every failure that they have. And even scientists, scientists, they're not robots. They have feelings, they have, thoughts and the such. They have ideas of belonging, they have attachments. So you can't ever expect a scientist to necessarily be entirely true, especially if they lack any possible knowledge about life and they just function like robots. Obviously, they will give you robotic responses. In this sick society, well, in any sick society, people will always be running away from their emotions. They will always think emotions are evil because they're too stupid to make use of those, and also too lazy to try to understand how their emotions function. So nothing will change in their life. So whatever name, whatever tag you put to them, they will simply accept it and they will live their miserable, most likely comfortable lives. Because if someone reaches a stage in life where they're comfortable with their misery, well, they're not worth saving anyways, because they will be fighting against you. Yes, you're not ever gonna be a savior to them. You're gonna be an aggressor because they are comfortable with their pain. Anyone who's comfortable will obviously always fight against anyone who will try to save them or change the way their comfort functions. And obviously, this is a survival mechanism. When you look at all us humans, we are no different. Like, there is no difference in between us and animals. We're also animals, but obviously we have this fetish for titles. We have to put ourselves superior to everything else because, well, from a certain standpoint, the human body is the most advanced machine on this planet. But it doesn't mean that we are necessarily superior to animals. Yes, we are capable of reaching, high spiritual levels. But some of these levels animals already have by design because they live in tune with nature. We live quite far away from nature, and all the distortions that we have created through technology and the such have a certain influence on our bodies each and every day because we are surrounded by, well, let's call them toxic vibrations from machines, from all sorts of internet devices and the such. These will have little influences on the body, but in time they will count. Let's not jump into ideas that, these are necessarily evil. They will have a bad influence, yes, but it's going to be a minor one. When you look at our lives, we're already putting all the poisons possible. Poison air we breathe, poison water we drink, poison food we eat. What's there such a problem if we have a few other poisons, like, Wi-Fi and the such? You know, mobile data and the such. They all have a bad influence on the body, but it's a minimalistic one nonetheless. And the body will get in time used to those. Yes, obviously there can be problems with such people, but we live in a sick society, so in the end, kind of nobody will care anyways. The more diseased people will be, well, someone else will definitely benefit. So when it comes to this idea of misery, to this idea that we would all be evil, one misunderstanding most likely exists. There is this animal brain that we all have, and well, science has been telling about that it is technically the first form that the brain actually had in nature. That's, well, they call it the reptilian brain. It is a quite advanced form of a brain, but well, compared to the brain of the human, the actual one that we use, it is, well, kind of outdated. It's, well, it includes, let's say, the impulses that we have, our natural impulses, and all of these should not be mistaken for someone being evil. The only evilness that we have in life is that all our perceptions about life have been kind of changed. Because in the end, people who don't like themselves, people who have these stupid complexes that there's something wrong with them, aka people living in a narcissistic society, well, they will always try to invent something new because it's their coping mechanisms running amok. And miserable people will always want their points of view to be imposed upon the others. And everyone else must follow at least the same beliefs that they have, if not be even more fanatical than them, right? Because that's how they feel safe and accepted. But they won't feel accepted anyways. They won't feel liked anyways, because narcissists can't ever have a good opinion about themselves nonetheless. In the end, there can be no such thing. Yes, because they are the epitome of hating themselves, and at the same time, it is much better to reflect it upon others. So it's much easier to simply hate everyone else. When you hate everyone else, obviously you are an enemy almost of entire humanity. So from here to a psychopathic, moronic dictator, there's not much of a difference. There's not much of a distance, anyways. And when people end up thinking that everyone is evil, well, a lot of people kind of have this opinion because they feel bad about themselves. So they have this ignorance related idea that everyone functions the same as them. When people are ignorant and comfortable for too long, they will think that everything they know is the most that there can be. There can be nothing new, so they will also become prosophobic. They will hate everything that is new. They will hate progress, in short. So anyone who comes in and says something new or something different from them, obviously they will militate against them. This is how misery tries to police everything other than itself, because misery is like a consciousness of its own. Don't take this literally. But people who are miserable, they will always feel that they are fighting for their own misery, right? So it's like they're policing everyone else to make sure that everyone else is miserable, because this is the only way they will feel somewhat happy or well fulfilled in a way, let's call it so. This idea of the reptilian brain, our impulses, and the such, this is the natural way of being, the natural way which knows that life is all about consumption. If your survival is at stake, your reptilian brain will dictate things like everyone else will become nothing else but a resource and must be used for your own survival. Isn't this also how narcissists already functions? Yes, they all function like this because they are fearful of everyone else, of their potential, of anything that can harm them. And well, since they are usually comfortable and they're always wasted in their ideas of the mind, and such people, all miserable people, will be suspicious because, yet again, people who are comfortable for too long, they will end up seeing that there can be no other thing than what they know. Yes? So these people, once they see someone else that functions differently, they will become easily suspectful. Yes, they will be suspecting of anything. So obviously they will be an enemy of anyone who functions differently. And they will always be preventive. It is better to pull other people down before they can try doing something different. Because to them, anything that is different from their strong belief that nothing else can happen than they know, obviously it is an alien aspect. It is something out of the blue, something they cannot understand. And miserable people will always have a fetish for control one way or another. If they cannot control or understand something, they will try to cope with it. They will try to invent things on why that should not happen. Yes, this is why sick societies never represented people who are intuitive, especially the feminine side, especially people who are, artists, people who can perceive things beyond the just intellect, just collecting data and trying to make a useless use of those. Because data can help you, but just using data, a machine will always be better than you. You don't need to be a machine. You need to learn how to be a human being. And in order to do that, you need to make peace with your emotions and understand that they are not something bad. Emotions are always bad for narcissistic people and for miserable people because the only emotions that they feel are bad ones shame, guilt, and the such. Aren't these the same weapons that they use against you? Yes, shame tripping, guilt tripping, and the such. And when people live for so long with this, even thousands of lifetimes as well before this karma makes them even more complacent. It makes them, in time, as they grow older beyond 30, 40, 50 years of age, they will become more and more complacent, usually. They will become more interested in this idea because it is the only comfort they have been knowing for a long time. And the people around them pulling them down, well, they're not gonna do them any favor. So when we think about this in life, well, it is easy for people to slip into misery again and again because most likely it's the only comfort they have ever known. When someone doesn't know a better comfort or doesn't wish to design a better, broader comfort zone, well, they will always fight for the little that they have. That is why these people will always settle for so little. And that is why a sick society's purpose is to always keep people like this. The more separation you create, the better it is for a sick society. Because a sick society cannot exist if people coexist, if people have communion, if people work together. You need to have them disbanded, you need to have them dehumanized, you need to have them degendered, and remove all sorts of aspects that naturally exist within them. Welcome to the woke society, in short. So, humanity has to understand there is nothing evil about you. If you are taken through enough punishment, through enough abuse and the such, obviously your coping mechanisms will kick in. This is how nature functions. You will see this in all cats, in all animals, dogs, crocodiles, any animal that you torment enough. You will see they will become far more aggressive, far more dismissive, far more of a monster than that animal may naturally be. A monster in the end is something that you consider. It is not something that necessarily exists. When people are too stupid to comprehend that nature and life itself exists only through consumption, it will always be a huge problem to them because when you hurt something, it will remind them of the fact that they are hurt. That is why you will see a lot of bozos crying that a plant was hurt or an animal was hurt, but you will never see them crying because a human was hurt because they have considered, embraced, and also almost even militate for the fact that humans are bad because they are doing bad things. Yes, because they've been hurt, and now they must hurt others as well. And they will never accept the idea that, humans are good because it will remind them of the fact that they can also be good. But their comfort zone is them being evil, them being miserable, and doing miserable things to other people. It will remind them of the fact that they're also not doing the right things. That's why the punishment of misery exists. This is the hell that you have been told in religion. You're not going to experience it in a geographically different way. You're experiencing here that hell if you're not doing the right things that your body requires. If you're not treating your emotions well, obviously you're only going to feel shit. And when you feel like shit, well, you're not going to want anything more than to impose that upon the others. What you know is what you must impose on the others. All this being said, hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated. Take care, enjoy life. And this being said, Ferencan Board signing out. If one talks about experiences in life, obviously they will easily end up thinking that there is something bad about them, or they are also evil since birth. Because when the first thing that they know in life is idiotic, stupid parents who don't know anything about life, who don't have any sensitivity and such. These people will always judge their children badly. When you've been badly judged by parents, whom as a child you'll be seeing as gods, you will believe that there is always something wrong about you specifically. And this will always enhance, it will always augment your perception that there is something wrong with people. When you end up believing this as if it is the only possible thing in the universe, in this whole world, you will also think that other people are equally evil with you. And you will reinforce this every time you see people doing misdeeds. And with mass media excelling at presenting only the horrible aspects in society, war, famine, and the such, which are also typically done by the governments that support mass media and pay them heavy money to speak what they want you to know, not what you should be knowing. It's obviously easy to think that there is something wrong with this sick society. This sick society is only the result of the misery of people. Misery comes from not wanting to understand your emotions, your own energies, your own capabilities of life. And you simply stay stuck to this stupid idea that your misery is the only thing you know. When you see pseudoscientific pieces of work that state everything is bad about you, obviously it is nothing else than a reinforcement. Don't forget, narcissism exists only because they constantly reinforce their ideas. They usually don't live in ideas, they live only in coping mechanisms, which give birth to all sorts of lies, illusions, self deceptions, and the such. And they have to be imposed upon the others because you're not allowed to function any way other than the way they are. That is why in a narcissistic society, communism is the epitome of such a society. Because what do you have in communism? Well, you have the worshipping of the so called leader. When you have the worshipping of a leader, what does it mean? All those values that are considered values, though, of that so called leader, you must function at least as much like those. You must function the way they want. What if you get a miserable leader? Well, obviously, you're also one, have to be miserable as well. Well, in the end, communism is the epitome of misery of everyone else. But when people are comfortable, well, the problem is they will embrace it as comfort. So, well, this is another point through which people might end up thinking that they are evil. Well, in the end, what are miserable people other than typically broken children who still seek somewhere deep down inside in the juvenility and purity of a child, they still seek to make their parents happy, to fulfill their parents, and to bring them the kindness and the love that the child knows. Except they now, at a certain age, they still function as that child because they're broken. And, when they were a child, they were not allowed the possibility to evolve beyond the level of a child. That's why you see a lot of the miserable people acting like children. They act on the first whim, on the first impulse, and they're always miserable because that's what they have been programmed uh, to function as since they were a child. Especially if they had abusive or families who didn't give them the attention that they needed. That is why such miserable people will always give the impression, or even like literally function, as if they have to please everyone else. They are still children in their brains, thinking that they are abandoned and they need to find their parents and they need to please someone so that they can feel good about themselves. Because all children will seek the validation of their parents. All children will seek to make their parents happy and to, appear good to them. But if you are taken through abuse, psychology says you need to go through certain cycles, through certain stages, and finalize those successfully. Abuse and trauma most likely can deny you such level ups, let's call it so. And when this happens, obviously it's easy to end up thinking that, this is the way. You cannot go even further, so you will stick to that. When people feel endangered, especially mentally, they will cope with it and they will think that their entire life is endangered. So that is why a lot of people will retreat to the comfort zone of the mind. People like narcissists and the such, miserable people, will always be suspicious of others because they can't trust anything. They can't trust themselves. They don't have a good opinion of themselves. So obviously, the grass will be greener on the other side. This hatefulness will stem from this idea as a child that they have failed their parents, that they couldn't do anything to please their parents because their parents, well, they were miserable, and obviously, miserable people, you can never please them in any way, shape, or form. You can try it in any way, shape, or form you want. Typically, you cannot fix them. You will not be able to fix them because to them, it's gonna be good that someone else tries because at least someone is doing something for them, so they will feel a bit worthy. But when they are too used to the fact that they are not, well, their miserable part will kick in and their impulse will be to save themselves from any change because it is their comfort zone to feel bad. You'll see a lot of people will invite you in their life and they will function like this. They are very miserable and they will expect you to be equally so. But they will invite you in their life, especially women will do that, and they will take you through all the torment that they have been taught. Because the feminine side, which is prevalent in females usually, but masculine, the males, of this race can also be feminine as well, not feminized. It's a whole different concept. And well, when that part is wounded, well, the feminine will always amplify that which they have known, that which they have been programmed to function through. And so they will simply improve the misery that they have been taught to live life through. And that is why everyone else will be invited in their life and will be taught the same misery. Because the feminine's purpose is to elevate, the feminine's purpose is to teach. But when it was taught the wrong things, it will also propel the wrong things into the others. That is why miserable mothers will usually give birth to pure children who they will turn in time into greater monsters than they themselves are. So